Safer Whitehall Town Hall meeting tonight. Welcome to New Life Church. My name's Claude Davis, and I'm the pastor here. And I just want to thank you for joining us tonight, and we're looking forward to some really great information, great presentation. So just sit back and relax, and we'll get started. I do want to begin with a word of prayer, so let's pray. Father, we thank you, Lord, for who you are. We thank you, God, that you love us more than we can imagine. We thank you, Father, for your grace and your mercy. We thank you for life and all that you do in and through us. And Lord, I want to especially thank you for our wonderful police department here in Whitehall. Father, we thank you for the chief and the staff and all the officers on the street every day, Lord. We're just so thrilled with the great job that they do. Lord, we thank you for the city. Thank you that Whitehall is a transforming community, Lord. I think you're doing some great things in this place. And Father, we are so pleased to be a part of what you're doing here in this city. And so God, I ask that you just manifest your presence in our time tonight. May your will be done and your kingdom come. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. All right, we're going to get started, and I'd like to introduce our Honorable Mayor, Kim Macker.
Good evening, everyone. So happy that you're here this evening. Now, I have a little disability, and I've got to put on my reading glasses because, and also, I can't remember everything that I was going to say, so it's written down. But again, I want to say thank you, Pastor Claude, for having us here in your beautiful facility. This is the second time now that we've been here, and I really so much appreciate you sharing your facility with us. Also, we have some elected city members here, and I would like all of you to stand up, and also Safety Director, if you could stand up. So we have Michael Bivens, City Attorney. We have two council members, and that's Lori Elmore and Karen Coniston. We have a school board member here, Leo Knobloch. We have our Safety Director, Van Gregg. So I just want to say thank you for coming this evening. We really we have all our elected members really, really care about the community, and this is an issue very near and dear to all of our hearts. So now I'm going to go back a little bit. Since these meetings began in 2017, the police department has embarked on a 3-year strategic plan focusing on 3 areas of improvement: operational effectiveness, administration efficiency, and community safety. Within the first 18 months, they have had quite a long laundry list of successes. Chief Crispin has incited a culture change that empowered officers and other staff to build relationships outside of their department, that our officers are now getting out into the community and making wonderful relationships there. We are also now able to place officers in areas of predicted crime, thanks to the addition of not 1 but 2 crime analysts for intelligence-led policing. To remain ahead of police industry standards, new policy and training systems have been adopted, contributing to our administrative efficiency. By attending this town hall, you are officially helping to aid our police department's effort for community safety. In addition, 4 K-9 units and 3 school resource officers have been added to our forces, along with new police officers, new equipment, and new forms of training for emergency preparedness and theft reduction. Speaking of theft reduction, theft arrests have decreased by 22% in the last year and a half. And that's not even the most impressive stat. Burglaries have decreased by 11%, robberies are down 47%, and if this does not make you a believer in the Safer Whitehall initiative, nothing will. Violent crime has decreased by 48%. Now, these greatest stats for improvement in more than 20 years. I think those numbers are amazing. The police department's narcotics team was also recently recognized by the Franklin County Sheriff with an award for their leadership in fighting the narcotics problem in and around not only in Whitehall, but in Franklin County as a whole. Our community is progressing in an amazing direction. However, there's still work to be done. You may have noticed the purple flags that line Yearling Road on your way to this meeting. Those are in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is the theme of tonight's town meeting. To elaborate further on current initiatives being implemented by the police department and how you can help us in improving safety in our community, and how you can continue our efforts to bring an end to domestic violence. Now, please, I would like for our police chief, Mike Crispin, to come up, and he can give you a lot more information. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to try this without the disability. I didn't bring my glasses up here, but I'll make it, I suppose. Thanks, Mayor, very much for your support in City Council, the community in particular for your support. A lot of those statistics that the Mayor just mentioned, certainly we're proud of them. You should be proud of them. Our officers are unbelievably proud of them. But I would say that does not happen without your support. It doesn't happen without the support of the Mayor, the Director, and the City Council. So we certainly can't have that, or couldn't do it without your help. I also like to thank Claude. Where are you at? I lost you there. You get musical seats. You keep bouncing around a little bit. This is the second time you've let us use this facility. I know, and actually third time we count the human trafficking thing you did there. So always available to us. We can't, without your help, we wouldn't be able to put these things on. So thank you very much for that, you and your church. So the Mayor said this Safer Whitehall initiative, right? What we do with these Safer Whitehall initiatives, if you haven't been to the town hall meetings, is typically I'll tell you a little bit of what the police has done, but my boss just did that for me, so I don't have to do all of that, right? But I usually do tell you that, but I'll tell you a little bit more about what we're going to be doing, but I always give you homework, right? So the second part of that is what can you do today to make Whitehall safer? What's the next steps that you can take? And every time we do that, there seems to be a little bit of a theme. And since this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it seems that's pretty obvious what that theme ought to be this time. So when I'm thinking about domestic violence, and in our department, we often talk about what is the main thing we do as police officers? What is our responsibility? And sometimes that gets kind of muddied with all these other things that we're responsible for, right? Really, we have one real solid duty, and that is to protect people's civil rights under the Constitution. That's our number one role and responsibility. Is the first thing we say when we raise our right hand, stand in front of the Mayor. That's our duty and our responsibility. So we talk about the Constitution, we talk about our duties within it. But you can't really talk about that, and now people are going to, some of my folks are about to roll their eyes. They're about to go into a history lesson, but I'm not, all right? But you can't really talk about that without talking about the foundation of it, which is the Declaration of Independence. And I'm only bringing that up because this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In the Declaration of Independence, we have a philosophy or a government entity, that's why we exist, to protect people's rights for certain things, certain rights that are considered self-evident, meaning that we don't have to argue them anymore. People have a right that's unalienable. It means you can't take it away from them, yet people are taking it away from them. And what are those rights? Well, there's a lot of them, but in particularly life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When you attach those three things, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to the domestic violence thought, of someone sitting at home with a busted mouth, afraid to tell someone what happened to them, in the hospital saying they fell down the stairs when everybody around them knows that's probably not what happened. When you attach that and overlay it to the Declaration and our requirement under it, somehow, some way they don't mesh. People aren't getting a life that they're afraid of their life. They're afraid to lose their life. There's no pursuit of happiness. That's not even in their mind right now. It's trying to get to some freedom. And so there's things that law enforcement does and the laws allow us to do, and I'm going to talk just a brief second about some of the stuff we're going to try to do next year. but the homework's coming, right? And I'm gonna need your help here in a minute. And what I'm gonna ask you to do is to help us start getting this message further than where we are, right? Start talking more. When we were talking this morning, Sergeant Greb and I, who oversees our detective bureau, we were talking this morning, and we were talking about the unreported. We deal with 200 domestic violence arrests a year. That's what we average here. 200. The last count I looked on there was about 58, 60, somewhere in there, that were felonious assault. Those are pretty high numbers that are occurring in our area. And we need to do a little bit more about those, but we also got to do something else about the things that scare all of us that wear this uniform to death, and hopefully all of you as well, and that's the unreported or underreported stuff, the ones that are sitting at home in the basement that haven't had the courage yet to pick that phone up and call for help. So maybe, and in most of those cases, and what we were talking this morning, was in some of those cases, it seems like afterwards, when you talk to people that are around, they sort of thought something wasn't right and something was going on, but nobody said anything, right? So I'm gonna ask you to do something for me. Can you flip the slide, please? You're gonna have to help me with this one, right? Because I just learned all about this hashtag thing, right? Always thought it was a pound sign. I guess it's a hashtag, so I'm gonna ask you to do something for me. If you got your smartphones, you can do it now. You don't have to wait. But sometime before the night's over, pick your phone up, find some material. She's going to have some material on the back. There's resources online. Use your social media, your Twitter, I guess you tweet, your Twitter, your Facebook, and get on there and say some messages about we've had enough of this, right? Just send the message that Whitehall has had enough, and we're not taking it anymore. And that even in some of these communities where they can't communicate the language well, and we don't have a good enough yet message to let them know that this is not allowed here in our city or in our country. People need to talk. People need to see things. They need to talk to the victims. And I think in a minute, Lorena, when she comes up here with us, our domestic violence advocate, will have an opportunity to tell you a little bit more because those are the experts there. And so when you do this, jump online, put something on Twitter, put something on Facebook, and then put hashtag Safer Whitehall, hashtag It's Not Okay. I'm told that will give us some statistics we can pull and make it go viral in Whitehall. You'll have to ask the experts on that, I don't know. But please, join us in that. Hashtag Safer Whitehall, hashtag It's Not Okay, and start talking to your neighbors about this domestic violence thing. So what is the police doing moving forward? In 2019, we're going to apply for some grants. And one of the grants I'm trying to get a hold of, and I think we have a very, very good opportunity to get it, is a grant that will allow us to take our domestic violence response team, which is essentially our officers, and allow us to collaborate and grow this into more of a task force with both the community as well as our city attorney's office and domestic violence advocacies, and try to follow up better after the initial calls. And so I think that's going to help a lot. That's a weak point. It's an area we need to work on. We've determined that internally. And to collaborate. So what's next? The homework? You just did that part for me, right? So if you would flip this slide. Before I move on, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, but I want to throw this slide up before, because the Safer Whitehall Initiative always says, what will you do today to make Whitehall safer? So when I do these, typically it's asking you to take the next little step. Nothing huge, like I just did, but I'd like to today just recognize City Attorney Michael Bivens and his office for the work that they did here recently in a swap meet. All right, their swap meet. So what they did was, and I don't want to go down this whole list, you can see the names up there. There was a lot of people involved in collecting and getting donations, and down this weekend at City Hall, and they got material and stuff for people who were victims of domestic violence or who might need stuff like clothing, house goods, just simple things that we take for granted, like soap and shampoo. And so you have to recognize there are so many good things that people are doing in pockets around the city. And I just want to say thanks, Mike, for what you guys did, Michael, for your group, because I saw some people, and I know they appreciated what you did, and I know the community does. And so here's the next piece of the homework, because there's a big red donate on there. I got to assume you're going to do this again? They're shaking their head like this, yes? All right, if pay attention, if you reach out to any one of them, reach out to me, we'll put you in touch with them. There are people still in a lot of need for some of this stuff, so if you can help out, reach out to us, and I don't care if it's just old clothes you got, whatever you got, I'm sure they can find some way to use it. Hopefully I didn't speak out of turn on that, but, all right, so again, thanks you guys for what you do with that. So, one last thing I want to ask you to do, and then I'm going to invite somebody to come up here, Miss Angel Owen. The only thing, this is another really easy task. That's listen to Miss Angel Owen. She has a story for you, and she's a survivor. And I want you to hear this story, and if nothing moves you to action after this, I don't know what will. But I want you to listen to Miss Angel Owen, and then after that, jump on there and start talking. So Miss Angel, can you come up, please? Now, if I go too much into introducing her, then I get into the story. So I'm going to let her do that. But thank you very much for coming and speaking to us.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Angel Owens, and I'm a 20-year survivor of domestic violence. 20 years ago, today actually, I was what you would consider free from domestic violence. It wasn't like free like how I imagined to be free. I ended up incarcerated at the Ohio Reformatory for Women as an end result of trying to get out. The resources and things that we have now that help, victims of domestic violence become free of the violence, we didn't have that back in 98, 99. I'm from Toledo, Ohio, and they didn't have that then. And I just think it's great that the programs and the shelters and the organizations that they have built around the domestic violence now is awesome. And if you see something, say something. That's the only way something could be done about anything. It's not really fair to say what the police won't do. It's not fair to say what the prosecutors won't do. It's not fair to say what the judges won't do if we're not saying anything. Like, that would be a fair judgment to say what you think. We got to do something, too, in order for something to be done, and it's not enough of that that's being done. And we have, like, the visual of domestic violence, like just the hitting and the punching and the hair pulling and everything. It's way beyond just the hitting and punching and all that. Like, it goes way beyond that. It's like financial, emotional, sexual. It's like a whole circle. If you would like Google, I don't know if any of you is like internet savvy or anything, but you can like actually go online and like look this stuff up and like see like what all it falls up under, if you don't know. But like me, I didn't know. And 20 years later, I met my husband. Healthy, happy, new relationship, no domestic violence, no nothing. And I'm okay today. 20 years ago, I couldn't say that I was okay. I was scared. I didn't know how to get out. And that's the number one thing when people bring up domestic violence. Well, why didn't you leave? Why did you stay in so long? Why you let him beat you up? When you scared half to death, it's not that easy just to get up and walk away. And if you have like little babies, little kids, it's not that simple because you got these little people that's with you that you have to make sure that they're safe too. So like, it's a fair game. If you out and you see somebody arguing or punching somebody or something like that, tell. Like, help them. They probably scared to tell, and they would probably be happy if you pick up the phone and called and told for them. That would really like help them. And let's not forget about the men too. That's also, we got like this image of, mother and child that's getting abused. It's men that's also being abused as well. Let's not forget about the men that's going through it too. And let's just utilize our, our police officers, our prosecutors, anybody that can help, like, don't be afraid, like the most of us was. And I appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you.
Don't walk away yet, so I just can't walk away that easily. So in our department, there's a couple of things we talk But it's typically what we're telling folks is how you respond to an event that occurs in your life has a huge impact on the outcome, not just you, but others around you. And so I like to first say thanks for the way that you responded to what happened to you 20 years ago. And I also like to say in our department, when somebody rises to a challenge, right? And this is not easy to stand up here and speak, right? To stand in front of all these folks there that are looking at you and staring, wondering what they're thinking, right? But you did it, and you stood up here and talked to them about what you went through a little bit, and that Kevin, right? See, I was dangerous there to make sure I didn't forget that. And now you have Kevin in your life and everything, so I would like to say first and foremost, appreciate what you come out and spoke to us, but also congratulations on rising to that challenge. And in our organization, if you rise to a challenge, you receive what we call a challenge coin. So congratulations, hope you covered it. Those are probably the best one you'll find anywhere, and law enforcement, those are like gold. So congratulations to you, and thank you. And I would like you to join us up here if you would for a second, if you're willing to. And I think Lorena and Dan can come up. We're going to open this up to the part of the town hall that's really important to us. This is important too, but this is important to us in the administrative side of law enforcement in the sense that we want to know what you're thinking as a community. It's not tied to the topic of domestic violence, but this is Domestic Violence Month. We can answer whatever questions you have. I'll jump ahead of it, and I'll go ahead and answer the speed questions now. And we are working on a program next year that will allow us to project some speed statistics onto the internet, allow you to see your roads. It's going to take a little bit of work over the year to do that, but allow you to log on and see the actual speed averages on your roadways. And you'll see where we're working and things of that nature, but that's in the works with some equipment we should be hopefully getting sometime next year to address a lot of these speed issues, electronic signs. And so we have a pretty significant plan hopefully in place for 2019 to deal with some of the speed stuff that seems to be a really good concern for some citizens. So we're still going to do the stuff we've done before, but we have another project in mind for 2019. So with that said, this comes off, right? I'm going to sit up here, and you can ask any one of us questions. Doesn't have to be about domestic violence, but if it is, here we are. And this is the expert. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I might have missed a few of them, so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorena Lacey. I am the Domestic Violence Victims Advocate, is the title that has been always used in the Whitehall City Attorney's Office. But I refer to myself as the Victim Services Coordinator. Because our office oftentimes does not get just victims and survivors of domestic violence, but we get folks that have been involved in all types of violent crime. And so I want to make certain that people are aware that they can contact our office with any question. It doesn't have to be about domestic violence, sexual violence. It can be about a felonious assault, a robbery, a theft. And so that's the reason why I refer to myself as that. I've been with the office since March of last year. It is very rewarding work. I want to thank Michael Bivens for giving me the opportunity to serve the city of Whitehall in this capacity. One of the things that I would like citizens to know and take away from this meeting is that our office and through my department, we are a safe place for victims of any crime to disclose, to ask questions, and to sort of be nurtured through their journey and their empowerment process. It has been the vision of the city attorney with respect to this issue that victims and survivors are empowered through their experience in reporting and dealing with the court system and seeking justice for themselves. I am very, very specific about making certain that victims and survivors know that there are no judgments from our office. We are there to assist you and to help you on your survival journey. And if that journey includes you reconciling with a person who was abusing you because there was a problem that was identified with that person, our motto is not just, lock them up and throw away the key. Sometimes there is a significant issue that needs to be addressed with either the victim or the abuser. And once that issue is addressed, one or both of them become better people. And if they're better individuals, then they become better in their relationship. they're better to their children, they're better fathers, they're better mothers, they're better husbands and brothers, and because it's not just boyfriends and girlfriends and husbands and wives that are dealing with this issue. There are siblings who are fighting in our community. There are mothers and sons who are fighting. There are daughters and fathers who are fighting. So this issue is not, as Angel pointed out, we have this sort of traditional idea of what domestic violence looks like, and domestic violence is, it covers a wide gamut of situations. One of the things that I hope that everyone did receive, if you haven't already, please make sure before you go. There is a white bag. It is information from the city attorney's office. It has our telephone number, our website address, information about resources that are available to victims and survivors. But there's also some information from the Domestic Violence Network that's on the table, and it's both for the heterosexual and the LGBTQI community to identify healthy versus unhealthy relationships. One of the key components, I believe, to anyone's empowerment is knowing the type of relationship that you're in. For those of you who are what they call bystanders, so you might not be in the situation, but you know someone who is, this will help you to identify some of those warning signs if a person is in an unhealthy relationship, and also the positive signs for someone who is in a healthy relationship. So I encourage you to take that information. There's also information from the Center for Family Safety and Healing, and it's called their Bystander Program. The pamphlet says, "Where's the line?" And many of you may have seen the commercial, some of you who attended the meeting a few months ago where the Center for Family Safety and Healing was present, and they were talking about teen violence and dating. That Where's the Line program is when that started. And it's for people who are sort of on the sidelines, who know that there's something going on at the neighbor's house. They're not really sure how to do or say something. So make certain that you do take a look at that information. And as Angel said, if you see something, do say something. And sometimes you don't have to necessarily say something to the police. Sometimes you can be that person that gives the individual that's in that negative situation the courage to come forward by just a touch, a hug, hey, I see what you're going through, and I'm someone that wants to help you. And if you won't allow me to help you, I know someplace where you can call, where you can get help if you're seeking that. So thanks very much for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later.
My name is Dan Kelso. I am the Deputy Chief over Patrol Operations. I'm the guy that everyone calls and yells at for the speeding problem the Chief just mentioned. So you can direct those yelling at me if you have any of those questions.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Sharpless. I'm the Administrative Deputy Chief. I oversee our Detective Bureau and the Narcotics Bureau and things of that nature. I also oversee our Communication Center. So if you call into the police department and speak to a dispatcher, hopefully you have a positive experience. If not, I'll address that as well. So I'm here if you have any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions for us then?
Maybe you can go into more detail about the swap you had recently. This is the first I've heard of it, and you're having another one?
Sure. So the swap meet I did came to me a while ago. I used to visit California a lot with my family. My dad is retired military. He always took us on a vacation every year, and we used to always go out and visit my cousins out in California. And so they had this swap meet, and you would pay a nominal fee to get in. Back then it was, I'm about to date myself now, $2 to $5 to get in, and then you could, get outfits or hats or, clothing. They had, all types of stuff, electronics. But it was at a very, very discounted price. So back then, many of you in this room may remember, some of you may not, but they used to have something called a cassette tape recorder. And so you could get a cassette tape recorder, for like $2. Where if you went to Radio Shack at the time, it might have been $20. So what I thought was, is there a way to sort of have this concept but then center it around things that individuals need when they are beginning or in the middle of their journey to survival. And a lot of things come into play people don't think about when you are your safety's compromised and you've got to go someplace immediately where your abuser doesn't know where you are. There's things that you don't think to take if you don't have a safety plan. And so in a go bag, you need toiletries. You need toothpaste, you need a toothbrush, you need soap, shampoo, medications, which we certainly didn't swap medications, so I don't want to, but I'm just thinking about things that are in a go bag, okay? Important papers, your driver's license or identification. If you have children and yourself, a change of clothing for a few days. Again, this is all part of safety planning, but things that people don't think about. When you are, again, in the midst of your journey and you finally gotten away from that negative situation and so you've moved into a new place, you need things like cups and bowls and spoons and, you know, again, things that we take for granted go into our cupboard every morning, but if you are someone who's on the run or someone who has finally gotten away and you are starting over, these are things that you need. Blankets. Sometimes it's nice to have a holiday decoration because a holiday's coming up and it might make your environment or your space just a little warmer and a little happier if you have, you know, some Christmas ornaments that are new that you can put on your already existing Christmas tree. Or someone actually donated the Christmas tree and all the ornaments, and that was awesome to see a family get that. So that's where the concept came from. It's sort of like a free garage sale. Okay, and so we ask all of the employees from the police department and our fire department and city employees to clean out their closets. Everybody's got that ugly Christmas sweater that they don't, you know, want to wear anymore, things that don't fit anymore. Lord knows I had a lot of those in my closet. And so donate those things because they can help. Someone else's trash is definitely someone else's treasure in these situations. So we had it on Saturday, October the 13th. I think it was a great success for our first go-around. Next year, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, our city attorney had the idea, but we just didn't have enough time to plan it for this year. But next year, we're going to incorporate a run as well. So just like they have Race for the Cure, we're going to have what's going to be known as the Purple Run. And what we're thinking about asking is that the entrance fee, if people wanted to donate cash, they certainly could, because we will use that for bus passes for victims to be able to get to court or some other great use. But we're also going to ask for canned food or non-perishable food items as an entry item. So that way we can help sort of fill the coffers of some of the organizations around that have food pantries. So it's still planning in progress, but we want you to make certain to stay tuned for October of 2019. We haven't picked the date yet, but start thinking now. And as you're, you know, going through the holiday seasons, and, you know, again, you're going to get those gifts that you really may not use, and when you see that you're not using it by March, just remember October's coming, and there will be a wonderful place for you to donate that, and you will make someone's life a lot better.
Basically, I just want to know, like, are our officers receiving any kind of training to, when they go out on domestic violence calls? As someone who was in a very bad domestic violence relationship for over 10 years and got out, when I left with my car and nothing else. But there were many occasions where officers were called out, and because he was the one, he was able to stay calm, while I was the one that seemed like I would, because of course I was frantic, you know, everything was going on. I was the emotional one. He was staying calm, and therefore nothing was ever done. So are our officers going to be receiving some kind of special training to identify with these kinds of things?
So I can't speak to the training that the officers receive. I'll let either the chief or one of the other officers here, but what I can tell you is that our office has met the police department, and our prosecutors have met with them and explained to them sort of the court process. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the laws changed a bit in Ohio and a number of other states in the United States. Ohio is what's now known as an arrest-preferred state for crimes of this nature. So when officers are called to a scene, they're now required by Ohio law to investigate. And if their investigation determines that there's probable cause or a great likelihood that the crime was committed, then they are required to file those charges and required to make an arrest. I've been to numerous trainings with other advocates, and I can tell you that some of the stories I've heard about how the advocates interact with their police departments is quite scary and horrifying. I am so thankful and so blessed for the Whitehall Police Department, because I get telephone calls from the officers, I would say 90% of the time, letting me know of not only the arrest, the defendant's name, the victim's name. Most oftentimes they get me a good telephone number for that victim. And so as soon as it's appropriate after the arrest, I'm in contact with that victim to explain to them what the next steps are, what to expect at arraignment court. And I am there to answer questions during the arraignment. make them aware that they can meet with the prosecutor if they choose to. Explain to them what the arraignment is about. So at arraignment hearing, the only purpose is bond. That's it. They don't start to deal with the evidence until we get into the pretrial and the jury trial phases of each case. So I'm very thankful for the police department. I think they're doing a great job in terms of making me aware, making our office aware of arrests that are made. I'm doing the best that I possibly can as the only individual in the office that deals directly with victims, other than the prosecutors initially, to get them the information that they need and answer any questions that they may have. And again, make them feel safe, not only in their disclosure, but safe in terms of their seeking justice and going through the criminal justice system. Our court process, it's not an easy process. You know, a lot of cop shows are on TV, everything's done in an hour. It's not done in an hour, okay? And so that's one of the things that I try to express to victims is that we're here with you through the whole, for the long haul. And if you allow us to help you, if you allow me to help empower you, if you allow me to answer your questions, I'm there to do that, and with no judgments, okay? So if a victim changes their mind in the middle of the court proceedings and decides they don't want to pursue the charges, if I'm disappointed about that, I don't show that to the victim, because I think that further traumatizes them in the event that they are feeling that way. And so, again, I'm very sorry for what you experienced years ago, but I can tell you that the laws have changed a bit, and we do our very, very best in the city of Whitehall, between our office, the police department, to make certain that victims are, from the very beginning, know that they have a place where they can get all of their questions answered and feel safe.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
So then I guess the next question would be, since she asked if it was some training for the police officers, I guess we would ask the officers up there, is there special training?
Yeah, domestic violence is a big issue from the academy on up to current training every single year. So we receive, and our officers get, from the very start, scenario-based training with actors. That starts in the academy, where you're judged on how you're handling those things, shown better ways, trained better ways, that type of thing. So that starts early on, and almost every single year we do an update training on domestic violence specifically. So lots of times, on all the different types of trainings that we do receive, that we update every year, the one thing that's consistent is domestic violence that we do year after year after year. You know, we might not do driver's training for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but we do domestic violence almost every single year, some portion, whether it's dealing with victims, whether it's like call me victims, that type of thing, or whether it's just law-based. What's new? What do we need to know? What do we need to do different? And oftentimes the prosecutor's office assists with that and does some of that training for us.
So 200 incidents a year is quite alarming. And I've heard statistics that say that the domestic violence runs are when officers are at most danger. So is that also a part of your training? I mean, is there training there to keep officers safe in those situations?
Yes, and you hear that often, that is one of the most dangerous calls a police officer can go on, and they do receive training for it. I think it's a 2-car for us. Sometimes in some cases, some of those situations, it's a 3-car, given the situation. Some of the houses we know we've had additional problems with. So the officers do get training for that. They treat every situation. It's kind of one of those situations where we say it's important for how we act, because our behavior has an impact on that environment. But at the same time, their mind has to always be thinking, this could be very bad for me, this could be dangerous for me. And so in our world, it's an act nice, think mean kind of thing, right? Unfortunately, you have to be very, you've just heard a couple folks talk about it. We just had Angel talk about it, where when they're dealing with, when officers are dealing with these folks, they're very compassionate, and that's why they become police officers, right? So you have this tendency to want to kind of relax a little bit and try to reach out and try to be compassionate, and then before you know it, you're smacked upside the head with a pan, right? You didn't see it coming. So they do get plenty of training for that, and we do have 2 cars for minimum for it, and in some cases we have 3-car minimums, depending on the situation. Miss anything there?
I'm curious, Angel, how did you get out of your situation?
Well, what happened was, no, seriously. Well, what happened, seriously, I end up and defended myself. Instead of going to the law officials correctly, going through the proper channels by filing the charges, making them stick and not dropping them, I end up and was in the result of having to defend myself. I was in another violent altercation, and I end up in defending myself. It wasn't the right thing to do, but it was my freedom. That was how I became free. I went to jail for that. Anybody else?
This is for Angel. First of all, I'd like to commend you and congratulate you for your courage and your strength to get out of that situation. And you oftentimes people say if you see something, say something. And there has been times when people have said something and the victim has actually turned on the person trying to help them. So how does that then encourage people to come forward to see something, say something? Because domestic issues can turn on you and become violent, and you be the person that's attacked. So in seeing something, saying something, what is it that we can do, continue to come back, and what was your triggering event that caused you or forced you to leave out of that situation? Everybody's triggering event may be different, but if you see something, say something, and somebody is actually saying something, but then you go back, I mean, how do we as citizens help in continuing to encourage you that we are here for you?
Well, like in my case, I was actually that person that got mad at the person that told for me. And it all depends. Like, if you're telling a person that's going to ask you in front of your abuser, like, hey, you're getting beat up, of course you're going to be in denial and you're going to react like, I don't know what you're talking about, you know, and then you're just going to be stuck in that situation. But for a person that's really trying to leave, if it's the right help, it'll be easier for them to leave than them, because they probably can't leave, you know, to be able to go get that help themselves, or they're probably restricted from a telephone or some of that nature or something. So it really depends on the situation and that person and how seriously they really trying to leave. It all depends on the victim, actually, for real.
One of the things that I can tell you in my position, I always make certain that the victim or survivor knows that my job and my role is to help you, regardless of how it is that you feel. So, for example, when I call a victim and they tell me, hey, I'm not interested in pursuing the charges, I don't want to file any charges, I make certain to express to that victim, you didn't file these charges. This is not you versus the defendant. This is the city of Whitehall and the state of Ohio versus that defendant, because what they're accused of, again, these are allegations, and I remind them everybody's innocent until proven guilty. I wasn't there, but when police are called to a scene, I ask them, did you call the police or did someone else call the police? If they themselves call the police, sometimes I get the response, well, I just wanted the police to make him leave. And then that's when I get the opportunity to explain to that victim, to empower them with the knowledge that the laws in the state of Ohio have changed. And when police are called to a scene, regardless of who makes the phone call, they're required by Ohio law to investigate. And if their investigation determines that that probable cause existed, then they file the charges. So this isn't you versus the defendant. This is the city of Whitehall and the state of Ohio versus the defendant. And even though you're known as the prosecuting witness, that's a fancy phrase for evidence, okay? And so we're always concerned about the safety of the evidence as the case is moving through the judicial system. So that's one of the ways that I try to overcome any negativity or hostility that I may get from a victim in that situation, by just empowering them with the knowledge about why it is that this situation is taking place, and that there's no guilt or shame. If you call the police because you were afraid then, but you're not afraid now, I understand that, but let me tell you what's going to happen now, because the charges have been filed, and here's the process that we have to go through in order to deal with the issue as a whole. Not just the charges that have been filed, but maybe there's some issue. I ask all of my victims questions. You know this person better than I do. How long have you been in your relationship? What was the argument about today? Other questions I may ask them is, so you've been together for 4 or 5 years. Do you think this person has an anger management issue? Were they using alcohol or drugs? There's a battery of questions that I ask and try to interview. And I always let victims know I'm not trying to get in your business, but some of these questions I have to ask because I'm trying to help you in any way that you'll allow me to help you. And it's necessary for me to have some of these answers so that I can know how best to advise you and to assist you and help you proceed through this process. I'm going to be honest with you. There are a number of times where cases end up getting dismissed by the court because the evidence doesn't show up. Anybody that's seen any cop show, you know that on Law and Order, Jack McCoy cannot prosecute the case unless there's evidence, okay? So if the evidence doesn't show up to court, the court only has the option to dismiss the charges. Now, there are some instances, though, where even though the evidence hasn't shown up, we're able to still get a conviction. And it might not be a conviction for domestic violence or assault, but it can be a conviction for a lesser charge like criminal mischief, which is a misdemeanor in the 3rd degree, but it's an enhanceable misdemeanor. So if this individual who's convicted of this or found guilty of this or pleads guilty to criminal mischief commits another similar offense, then they can start to take a look at whether or not that next offense is a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor. One of the things that I think, and this is just my personal opinion, it's not the opinion of the city attorney's office, okay, so before anybody starts tweeting or blogging, this is Lorena Lacey saying this, okay? In my perfect world, I would like to see the charge of domestic violence, even for first offenses, be a felony in the 5th degree, that low-level felony. Because I think sometimes with the message that it's a misdemeanor in the 1st degree, a lot of victims say this to me, it's only a misdemeanor. Did you look at my face? I was bleeding. I had to go to the hospital. I've had stitches, and it's only a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. And the officers, I think, share a similar frustration because they can only charge what the law allows them to charge, predicated on the circumstances. And so I wish it were a felony in the 5th degree. I think if people knew that they would be facing a felony for the first time they raised their hand in that wrong way, that might be a deterrent, because then you're looking at prison time and not just time in a county jail in our state. I hope that answers your question a bit.
Hi, I'm just excited just to be, first of all, I am a citizen of Whitehall for over 19 years, and then also I'm a counselor. And so just to be a part of this and just to see us evolving into this, I'm very excited. I've been working with batters of domestic violence for over probably 15 years. And so one thing, as I'm hearing you talk, we have to remember also that the cycle, when you look at the survivor, the victim, is 7 times. It takes literally 7 times before she or he leaves the situation. And for me, what I've learned and what I've done through the process, and I think you said that, Angel, is that we're dealing with 2 people. And because we're a Christian-based organization as well, we're dealing with 2 people that have been hurt, have been harmed, and so there's work that has to be done. And when I work very closely with Franklin County courts, and I get referrals, and I have over 25, maybe 30 men that we've worked with, probably they have to do it 40 weeks at least. And so what has changed now is that there's a competency-based program where they used to just come in and they just did programming. Now there's a competency-based program where there's some things we have to see. There's some things they have to do before they're even able to complete the program. And even when I started this, the state didn't pick it up like they pick it up now. Now the state is picking it up, and that makes a difference. And so I see the great work that's being done. I'm a part of the great work that's being done. And so when we look at domestic violence and how we are evolving and how we're changing, we have to really say in our communities that we're not going to stand for it. And also in that, remembering that we're dealing with people that have been hurt, people that have had this in there. I worked with guys that they just didn't know any different because this is the way Uncle Bob did, and they watch it. This is the way Paw did it. This is the way Dad did it. You know, this is what we do in our, one guy said, this is what we do in our culture to keep our women under control. And so when we look at this, it's so embedded in the batterer's life, whether it's male or female. And so I always try to remember that for me personally, that I'm here for the family, for the people. Because when you look at the trickle-down effect that it has on the children in our communities and the safety of our officers that we all have to begin to look and say something. So again, remembering that the cycle itself is 7 times. And so if we can get in there and we can give that person a hug, if we can bring them here to church or bring them somewhere where they're willing to sit down and talk to us and share with us. We may not have all the answers, but we're able to say, I'm not going to stand for it any longer. So I appreciate Whitehall. I'm excited about just being a part of this and what's going on.
And two, sometimes that saying something, Ms. Elmore, is not necessarily a citizen saying something to a police officer about what it is that they're seeing. I meant saying something to that potential victim, that I see you, and I hear you, and let me help you in giving you some information about, I know you can call this place and they can answer any questions that you might have. And you're not going to be pressured to file charges if it's not something that you want to do. You're not going to be pressured if charges have been filed to get a protective order if that's not something that you want. But it is a safe place where you can disclose and get all of the information that you need and answers to your questions.
Good evening. How are you? Thank you so much for this. My apologies. We have parent-teacher conference, and I need to make sure that my son is going to walk across the stage. So, but just never know. He may go crazy one day. But one of the things I wanted to make sure that I touched on is for the entire panel. My professional job as a director of Franklin County Job and Family Services is to ensure that people have support services. And one of the things we did a year and a half ago was we looked at an emergency assistance program. And there was a time where you couch surfers could not obtain emergency assistance. But what we understand is women who are living, or anyone who is living in a domestic violence situation, they will reside in a home based on the financial strain it could cause on the other person. So I want to say this to you. I told my staff I was going to come here to say this to all of you. If there's any information that we can provide for you for any person in a situation, provided they are eligible for emergency assistance, which is $1,500, provided they are eligible, please reach into our office because we want to make sure that those resources get to where they need to go.
Awesome. We would certainly do that. That's a guarantee.
More of a recommendation or something that I think would be worth considering. You said the first time domestic violence is reported, you are obligated to do an investigation. And if the evidence does not show up, then it's sometimes a no probable cause. Has there been consideration that maybe the second or third triggers a mediation step where both people have to come in, otherwise more severe consequences occur, or some type of mediation, and then maybe both of them will figure out they should be together in the first place, or it could help direct the conversation or direct them to seek help in some other way. So has mediation been considered as one of the triggering points of helping to get to a result, resolution?
So, that's an excellent suggestion. It has not been something that has been discussed in our office, in the city attorney's office, but I can tell you that I not only get phone calls from the officers regarding an arrest, they also make me aware of the offenses that take place. And so by an offense, I mean there was an investigation, probable cause was not determined. They still make me aware of that run. They give me the name of both parties involved and telephone numbers, and I do reach out to those folks as well to say, hey, I'm just calling to follow up. I understand that there was an incident. Just wanted to make sure that everyone's safe, and ask some questions. So in that respect, it's not a traditional mediation. But I do want you to know that as often as I'm made aware of those offenses, I do reach out to the individuals that are involved in those as well. I'm not sure who from the police department.
Yes, on that matter, we actually do a follow-up. Generally, when our officers respond to a call, if we either label it's either domestic violence or it's a disturbance. If it's a disturbance, there's a report taken, but there's no arrest, there's no probable cause for any arrest. And we have actually assigned our detective bureau, Sergeant Gret up here in front. Him and one of his detectives do follow-ups on all disturbances. So after the fact, they go back to the house, they speak to the victims, and they try to do a follow-up to see exactly what you're saying.
Are they looking for help? Is there something else that we can do? As far as mandating that they go to some type of mediation, that's not something that we're able to do, but we can certainly offer it to them. Thank you.
Good evening. My question is in regards to your partnerships with the schools, in addition to the teen dating violence, which is just troubles me, not just the adults, but the teens and even the middle schoolers. Now, I don't know if you go into the elementary schools, and the reason why I'm saying the elementary schools is because, you know, they are most likely in a home where domestic violence is occurring. And so I wanted to know, like, how do we empower even those young ones, maybe to be able to, you know, when they go to school, to be able to speak up and say, you know, hey, this is going on at home. You know, how do we make them feel safe and comfortable, you know, saying, you know, mommy's hitting daddy or daddy's hitting mommy, or, you know, something's going on.
That's a good segue, and I appreciate you asking that question into our school resource officer program. Our school resource officers, we have one in each one of those levels of the school, and the high school has a full-time. They're all full-time, but we have some in the grade schools. One of the officers has to hit a bunch of those. But they each have curriculum, and they each have stuff that they got both from Washington, D.C. and from the state of Ohio, mandated sort of kind of training they have to do within the school systems. And they also have to work very closely with the schools. So when our school resource officers or when the police get in the schools, we're not actually in charge of what happens in the schools. So that relationship building that our school resource officers are able to do with the school system and bring in the material you're talking about into the school with the superintendents, with the principals of the schools, then they can work with those teachers. We also learn from the teachers, and as that collaborative there, then we begin to be able to know age-specific or age-appropriate kind of training for those children. Now, one of the things I think is more important than just giving the kids some education and hoping they're going to tell us stuff, and this is the power, I think, in the school resource officer program, is that the school resource officers build very strong relationships with those children. And they run up to them and they hug them. You see it all the time. If you follow them, I'm sure if they were here, they'd be hashtagging their own stuff, right? Because those kids follow and they're friends with them, and they want to be able to have a good relationship with a mentor like that, an adult mentor, and they have a lot of respect for them. And then they are encouraged, they feel encouraged to be able to tell those officers this is what's happening to me, and then they can interact on more of a private level with the school. But there are a lot of different ways that can be done, so there's no one specific way to do what you're saying. The school has its own education material. The school resource officer and law enforcement have a particular material. The government has something to try to have an awareness kind of program, and there's just a lot of different avenues that is throwing that material at them, but that still isn't always the answer. Sometimes the answer is those of you sitting around here, or all of us sitting around here, we sort of know something happened, so we need to probably say something to somebody. I'm glad you asked it, because we do have 3 school resource officers in the school that are doing that on a routine basis every day. Thank you. A show of hands, if I can, just out of curiosity, and I'll raise mine first, but out of curiosity, how many in here know somebody very close to them or has been a victim of domestic violence? If you look around that room, that's almost every single person in here. That's a lot of people. So I think that's just gives the evidence to what we were saying earlier, that it's around us. If we're paying attention to it, someone just has the courage to say something. We're not asking you to arrest anybody. We'll take care of that part for you. Any other questions? One in the back.
Can you hear me, or do I have to get on the mic? You can talk. I can talk. That's right. I work for Franklin County Child Support, so we receive calls every day in regards to domestic violence. And we have many situations where the parents have split up and the dad has come to the mom's house to see the child and she won't let him or whatever. How do you all handle that? And I guess guess I'm asking the police officers this. It's a domestic issue. It could escalate to domestic violence. But let's say it's a situation where dad wants to see the child, mom won't allow him because there have been domestic violence issues. You know, I know this may be kind of hard to answer, but we get these calls every day. We deal with this every day from our aspect of our agency. So how do you all handle that?
Yeah, we get those calls every day. And when you say every day, it's like literally every single day.
Yeah.
There's no one answer for that. Every single situation's different. We can't force any, especially if it's a split up situation, we don't force anyone to say, well, grab that kid, give it to him. We can't do that.
Right.
Judges can issue orders on that. And then if people don't comply, then the judges can issue warrants off of that for the failing to comply with their order, okay? So that's how we look at it. We try to assess every situation differently. We try to talk people, intervene, to give up the child, to let, you know, if it's a safe situation, that we do our best to try to intervene on just like a mediation type of level. But there's just really no one answer for that. It's too hard. Sometimes we just say, sorry, call your lawyer. We're not going to force her to push the kid out the house to you. We're just not going to do it. We don't have that authority.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a civil type of situation. They're going to have to get a hold of the lawyer.
I would just add that in a lot of those situations, we recommend that they actually meet at the police department if they're able to exchange the children. At that point, a lot of times one of the parties doesn't show up, and then we have a kiosk. The person that has shown up, they can document that they were there and that the other person didn't show up for that can be presented to the magistrate at a later time. But as he said, we generally don't get involved as far as forcing one parent or the other to turn a child over. We will investigate, try to mediate as best we can. If neither party is willing to give, then the child will stay with the parent that they were originally with, and we'll go ahead and separate the two and refer them both to their attorneys.
Now, a caveat to that is unless the child's in a dangerous situation,
Right.
then we're required by law. We will step in and take that child.
Right.
And we don't care what kind of orders are in effect. So we do that. But just simply, I want him, that type of thing, we just can't.
I know. I have one more question.
Once she starts talking.
Hey, hush, hush.
I'm going to run that way next
I
time.
know. This is completely off this domestic violence subject. I am a resident of Whitehall. I've been here for 4.5 years. And what I want to know is if you know of a property that needs to, like my neighbors are renting this property and the property management company or the owners are just letting it just go to pieces, who would I contact to make the city, I don't know, do you make the city bring it to the owner's attention? Or what is the
Yes,
process
you
that I
can
would need to
contact
take?
code enforcement for that.
Code enforcement?
Code enforcement.
The service department or?
Yes.
Okay, and so, all right, I will do that. I've done that, but I'll do it again. Thank you.
Do it again. We have time for one or two more. All right.
I just wanted to know where I can donate for the domestic violence, like clothing and all those types of things. Can I connect and kind of get that information?
So we'd be more than happy to take any items that you have. Make sure you get one of the bags. You can contact our office. It's the city attorney's office. I will also let you guys know that if anybody has any old cell phones, the Center for Family Safety and Healing will take those cell phones, they refurbish them, and then they give them to victims who are on their survival journey so that they have a safe means by which to make telephone calls free from their abuser being able to get into those phones. But if you give our office a call, we'll be happy to either take the donations from you or give you some ideas about where it is that you can self-donate.
First, I just want to say, number one, thank you. To you guys personally, I don't want to hold it up. Too bad. I was a victim of domestic violence as a child. I grew up in a home where my dad beat my mom. And so this was back in the 60s, 70s. I just dated myself. But, so the laws were completely different back then than what it is now. Society, I think, is starting to accept domestic violence as being a real issue. So, I appreciate all the work that you guys have put in towards that. My question, and it could be a quick yes or no, I guess, and then we can talk later, but do you offer any volunteer work in your domestic violence
Always.
department?
I'm going to say always,
For-
because you know you will. You don't even try to say no.
But certainly, make certain that you give our office a call. I will tell you that Monday through Saturday, I am generally in court. Arraignment court happens in municipal court, Monday through Saturday. And so we do have a lot of cases where they're going through arraignment court. Some days we have days where I don't have to be in court, but most generally I'm out of the office 8:30 to 1 or 2 o'clock every day.
Okay.
But please don't hesitate to call, leave a message if I'm not there. And you get my voicemail, the cell phone number is on there. Also, anyone in our office, Julie, who's our legal assistant, Tracy, who is our administrative assistant, Brad Nicodemus, who is one of our, was the assistant city prosecutor or city attorney. They can get a message to me, they'll email me, and I'll get back with you absolutely as soon as I possibly can. But certainly, we would welcome any assistance on a volunteer basis. That's actually how we came to know.
We're not paid.
Walked into our office and said, "Hey, I see you just for this month, and I just wanted to see if there's anything I could do to help." So,
Okay, thank you very much.
we're easy like Sunday morning.
Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for us, unless somebody has one more question. If not, we will conclude this, and let me remind everybody, first again, thanks to everybody for coming out. This is very humbling and important to the safety of our community. The more we interact, the more we communicate, the more we start to learn issues, the more we can start to address these issues. That said, I'm going to try this one more time. Hashtag Safe for Whitehall. Hashtag, what was that? I'm just seeing if they're paying attention. Thank you.